Chapter 1. The Rich Man's Castle. Mr. Carter was a rich and powerful man. He lived in a grand house that everyone called the castle. It was so big that people often got lost inside. The floors were shiny like mirrors, the windows were tall and bright, and the garden was full of colorful flowers and fountains that sparkled in the sunlight. Mr. Carter had 3 daughters, Lily, Rose, and Mia. Each was beautiful and special in her own way. Lily, the eldest, was smart and serious. Rose, the middle daughter, was kind and graceful. Mia, the youngest, was quiet but full of curiosity. Even though Mr. Carter loved his daughters, he was very strict. He made many rules for them to follow. They could not stay out late, talk to strangers, or even go into certain rooms in the house. The daughters often wondered why their father was so careful, but they never dared to ask. But the Carter sisters had secrets of their own. Lily often went out late at night when no one was watching. Rose kept a small box hidden under her bed, filled with letters. And Mia? She had found something in the house that no one else knew about, a secret room with a locked door. The castle looked perfect from the outside, but inside it was full of mystery and secrets. The sisters loved their father, but they also wanted to know the truth about the house, about him, and about their own lives. Little did they know, the answers to their questions would soon change everything. Their story was about to begin. Chapter 2. Lily's Secret. Lily Carter was the eldest of Mr. Carter's daughters. She was smart, confident, and always ready to take on challenges. She worked closely with her father, helping him run his big business. Everyone in the town admired Lily. They thought she was perfect, but Lily had a secret. Every night, after everyone in the house went to sleep, Lily would quietly leave the castle. She tiptoed through the long hallways, careful not to make a sound. She slipped out through the back gate of the garden and walked to the edge of the town. There, she met a young man named James. James was kind and hardworking, but he was poor. He worked as a mechanic and lived in a small house. Lily didn't care about money. She loved James because he made her laugh and treated her like a queen. They often talked under the stars, dreaming of a future together. But Lily knew her father would never approve. Mr. Carter believed that his daughters should only marry men from rich and powerful families. If he found out about James, he would be furious. One night, James gave Lily a small necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. "This is my promise," he said. "One day, I'll give you everything you deserve." Lily smiled and held the necklace close to her heart. But as Lily returned to the castle that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She quickly slipped back into her room, her heart pounding. If her secret was discovered, everything could fall apart. For now, Lily's love for James remained hidden, but secrets like hers could not stay in the dark forever. Chapter 3: Rose and the Hidden Letters. Rose Carter, the middle daughter, was known for her beauty and gentle nature. She loved spending her days in the garden, surrounded by flowers, or sitting by the window, writing in her notebook. Rose had a passion for words. She wrote letters every day, pouring her heart into them. But these letters were not meant for anyone in the house. Rose kept a small wooden box under her bed. It was painted white with little roses carved into it. Inside, there were dozens of letters tied with a red ribbon. Each letter began with the same word, Dear A. One morning, while Rose was in the garden, the maid was cleaning her room. The maid accidentally knocked over the wooden box, and the letters spilled onto the floor. Curious, the maid picked up one and read it. The words shocked her. Dear A, I dream of you every night. I know our love is dangerous, but I can't stop. If anyone finds out, it will ruin everything. Please be careful. I will wait for you forever. The maid quickly put the letters back and left the room, her mind racing. Who was A? And why was their love dangerous? She decided not to say anything, but her silence would not last long. That evening, Rose noticed her box had been moved. She panicked, her hands trembling as she checked the letters. They were all there, but she felt uneasy. Did someone see them? Rose sat by her window, staring at the moon. She thought of A and the secret they shared. She wished she could be free to love without fear. But in the Carter family, secrets were heavy burdens, and Rose's was one of the heaviest of all. Soon, her hidden letters would lead to questions and danger she couldn't escape. Chapter 4: Mia and the Secret Room. Mia Carter, the youngest of the three sisters, was different from her siblings. She was quiet and shy, preferring to spend her time exploring the castle rather than mingling with people. Her curiosity often led her to places no one else bothered to look. One rainy afternoon, while wandering through the west wing of the house, Mia noticed a door she had never seen before. It was small and tucked away behind a heavy curtain. The door was locked, but Mia's sharp eyes spotted an old, rusty key hanging on a nearby hook. Her heart raced with excitement. She grabbed the key and slipped it into her pocket. For days, Mia thought about the door, wondering what secrets it held. Finally, one night when the house was quiet, she tiptoed to the west wing, key in hand. The lock turned with a soft click, and the door creaked open. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of dust. The room was small and dark, with old furniture covered in white sheets. Mia lit a candle and began to look around. On a table, she found a stack of old photographs. As she flipped through them, she froze. One photo showed a woman who looked exactly like her father. She had the same sharp eyes and serious face, but softer, more feminine. Mia's hands shook as she turned the photo over. On the back, someone had written, Sophia Carter, 15 years ago. Sophia? Mia had never heard that name before. Who was this woman? Why did she have the same last name as them? Mia looked around the room for more clues, but found only a locked chest and a dusty mirror. She put the photos back and left the room, locking the door behind her. She didn't tell anyone what she had found. That night, Mia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The image of Sophia haunted her. Who was she? And why had her father never mentioned her? Mia knew she had discovered something important, but she also knew that uncovering the truth might bring more trouble than she was ready to face. Chapter 5. The Stranger at the Door. It was a quiet evening in the castle. The rain tapped softly on the windows, and the Carter sisters were gathered in the living room. Lily was reading a business magazine, Rose was sketching in her notebook, and Mia was playing with a small puzzle. The peaceful silence was suddenly broken by a loud knock at the front door. The maid hesitated before opening it. Standing in the doorway was a tall man in a dark coat. His face was serious, and his eyes looked sharp, like they could see through walls. "I need to speak with Mr. Carter," the man said in a deep voice. The maid, unsure what to do, called for Mr. Carter. When their father arrived, the sisters watched from the staircase. The moment Mr. Carter saw the man, his face turned pale. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him, but the sisters could still hear their voices through the crack. "What are you doing here?" Mr. Carter asked sharply. "We need to talk," the man replied. "It's important. You can't avoid this forever." "I said leave." Mr. Carter's voice was angry now, louder than the rain. "You have no place here. Don't come back." The stranger didn't argue. He simply nodded, gave Mr. Carter a piercing look, and walked away into the darkness. When Mr. Carter came back inside, his hands were trembling. He didn't say a word as he climbed the stairs to his office and locked the door. The sisters exchanged confused glances. Lily, always the bold one, whispered, "Who do you think he was?" Rose shook her head, her eyes wide with worry. "I've never seen Father look so scared." Mia, clutching her puzzle, said softly, "What if it has to do with the secret room?" The house felt colder that night, as if the stranger's presence had left a shadow. Each sister lay awake in her bed, wondering who the man was and what he wanted. One thing was certain: the stranger's visit had stirred something buried deep in the Carter family, something that would not stay hidden for long. Chapter 6. Lily's dangerous meeting. Lily couldn't stay away from James, no matter how risky it was. She loved him deeply, and their late-night meetings were the only moments when she felt truly free. That evening, as the house grew quiet, Lily slipped out of the castle once again. She wore a dark coat to blend into the shadows and walked quickly through the garden gate. James was waiting for her at their usual spot, a small bench near the old clock tower at the edge of town. His face lit up when he saw her, and they embraced under the moonlight. "I missed you," James said, holding her hands. "I missed you too," Lily replied, her voice soft. "But I'm worried. If my father finds out." "He won't," James interrupted, trying to reassure her. "I'll protect you, Lily. No one can keep us apart." But what they didn't know was that someone was watching them. A man in a long coat, one of Mr. Carter's trusted workers, had been following Lily. He stayed hidden behind a tree, a camera in his hands. He snapped picture after picture of Lily and James together. The man smirked. "Mr. Carter will want to see this," he whispered to himself. When Lily returned home, she felt uneasy, as if someone had been following her. She shook off the thought and went to bed, hoping the night would pass without trouble. The next morning, however, trouble arrived. Mr. Carter stormed into the dining room, his face red with anger. He threw a stack of photos onto the table. "Lily," he said, his voice cold and sharp, "what is this?" Lily's heart sank when she saw the photos of her and James. "Father, I can explain," she began, but he cut her off. "No explanations. I told you to stay away from him. Do you have any idea what people will think? You're a Carter, not some foolish girl who runs off with." "Enough," Lily shouted, standing up. "I love him, and I won't stop seeing him, no matter what you say." Mr. Carter's expression darkened. "If you don't end this, there will be consequences. You don't understand what you're risking." Lily glared at him, her hands trembling. "Maybe it's time you told me what you're so afraid of, Father." The room fell silent, the tension thick as a storm. Mr. Carter walked out, slamming the door behind him. Lily sat down, her heart racing. She knew she had defied her father, but she couldn't let go of James. What she didn't realize was how dangerous her love for him would become, not just for her, but for everyone in the Carter family. Chapter 7: Rose's Love Revealed. The moon hung high in the sky as Rose quietly slipped out of the castle. She wrapped a scarf around her head, hoping to stay unnoticed. Her heart pounded with both excitement and fear. She was on her way to see the person who filled her hidden letters with love and longing. Her steps were soft as she made her way to the small park in the town square. It was quiet, except for the rustling leaves and the occasional chirp of crickets. Sitting on a bench under the old oak tree was Alex. Alex was a young man with kind eyes and a warm smile. He worked at the market, selling fruits and vegetables. Despite his modest life, he was brave and full of dreams. Rose had fallen for him the moment they first met, but she knew their love was forbidden. "Rose," Alex said softly as she approached. He stood and took her hands. "You came." "I couldn't stay away," Rose replied, tears shining in her eyes. "But I'm so scared, Alex. If Father finds out." Alex frowned, his jaw tightening. "Your father hates me because of my family, doesn't he?" Rose nodded. "He and your father had a fight years ago. I don't know the details, but he'll never forgive him. He thinks you're the same." Alex sighed and pulled Rose into an embrace. "I'm not my father, Rose, and I'll do whatever it takes to prove that to him. I love you." Rose cried softly against his shoulder. "I love you too, but I don't know how we'll make this work. Father won't let us be together." Alex gently lifted her chin so their eyes met. "We'll find a way. No matter what it takes, I'll stay with you, Rose. You're my everything." The two sat on the bench, talking quietly about their dreams and fears. For a moment, it felt like the rest of the world didn't exist, but Rose knew this peace wouldn't last. As she made her way back to the castle that night, her heart was heavy. She loved Alex with all her soul, but the weight of her family's past hung over them like a storm cloud. Rose could only hope that love would be enough to weather the storm. In the shadows, unseen eyes watched her return. Secrets once hidden were beginning to unravel. Chapter 8. The Mystery of the Woman in the Photos. Mia couldn't stop thinking about the photos she had found in the secret room. The woman in them looked so much like her father, yet she was a stranger. The name on the back, Sophia Carter, echoed in her mind like a riddle waiting to be solved. One quiet morning, Mia decided to ask someone who might know. She found Mrs. Hill, the family's maid, dusting the library. Mrs. Hill had worked in the castle for years and knew almost everything about the family. "Mrs. Hill," Mia began hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" The maid turned to her with a kind smile. "Of course, dear. What's on your mind?" Mia pulled the photo from her pocket and held it out. "Who is this woman?" The smile on Mrs. Hill's face faded. Her hands trembled as she took the photo and stared at it. "Where did you find this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. In a locked room, Mia admitted. I found the key by accident. Please, Mrs. Hill, tell me. Who is she? The maid glanced around nervously, making sure they were alone. Then she leaned in close and whispered, That's Sophia Carter. She was your father's first wife. Mia's eyes widened in shock. His first wife? But why has no one ever mentioned her? Mrs. Hill hesitated before speaking again. Sophia was a lovely woman, kind and strong. Everyone admired her. But one night, years ago, she disappeared without a trace. No one knows what happened to her, and your father never talks about it. It's like she was erased from the family story. Mia's mind raced with questions. Why would she disappear? Did something happen to her? The maid shook her head. I don't know, Mia. All I know is that after she was gone, your father changed. He became colder, more guarded. It's a painful subject for him, and no one dares to bring it up. Mia stared at the photo, her heart heavy with a mix of curiosity and unease. Thank you, Mrs. Hill, she said quietly. As Mia left the library, the weight of Sophia's mystery pressed down on her. Who was this woman? Why had her father kept her existence a secret? And most importantly, what had happened to her? Mia knew she had to find out the truth. But the more she uncovered, the more she realized that some secrets were buried for a reason. Chapter 9. A Dangerous Night. The castle shook as thunder roared outside. Rain lashed against the windows, and the night seemed darker than usual. The Carter sisters were in their rooms, each lost in their thoughts, when a loud crash echoed through the house. Lily and Rose ran out of their rooms, their hearts pounding. What was that? Rose whispered, clutching her sister's arm. I don't know, Lily said, trying to stay calm. But it sounded like it came from downstairs. Before they could investigate, the maid rushed up the stairs, her face pale with fear. There's someone in the house, she gasped. A thief. Where's Mia? Lily asked, her voice sharp with worry. Rose froze. She was in her room earlier. She's not here now. The sisters checked Mia's room, but it was empty. Panic set in. We have to find her, Lily said firmly. Quietly, they crept through the house, their steps muffled by the sound of the storm. They checked the dining room, the library, and even the kitchen, but there was no sign of Mia. Then Rose remembered something. The secret room, she whispered. What if she's there? Lily nodded, and they hurried to the west wing. When they reached the hidden door, they found it slightly open. Inside, Mia was sitting on the floor, clutching the photos of Sophia. Tears streamed down her face. Mia, Lily whispered, rushing to her. What are you doing here? It's not safe. I needed to see her, Mia sobbed, holding up the photos. I needed to know who she was. I feel like she's the answer to everything. Before Lily or Rose could respond, they heard a noise behind them. They turned to see a shadowy figure standing in the doorway, the thief. He was tall and dressed in black, holding a small bag of stolen items. The sisters froze, their hearts racing. The thief stared at them for a moment, his eyes narrowing. Then, as if deciding they weren't worth the trouble, he turned and ran. The sound of his footsteps faded into the storm. The sisters breathed a sigh of relief, but their fear hadn't completely left. Come on, Lily said, helping Mia to her feet. We need to get back to our rooms before Father finds out. As they left the secret room, Mia clutched the photos tightly. She didn't say a word, but her mind was racing. The thief had come and gone, but the mysteries of the house, the locked room, the woman in the photos, and her father's secrets remained. The storm outside seemed to mirror the turmoil inside the castle. For the Carter sisters, this was just the beginning of a night they would never forget. Chapter 10. The Big Secret. The storm had passed, but the tension in the castle remained. The morning light was dim, and the air felt thick with secrets that were waiting to be revealed. Mr. Carter had called his daughters to the dining room, his face more serious than they had ever seen it. Lily, Rose, and Mia sat at the table, each of them exchanging worried glances. Their father's gaze was cold, distant, and his hands were clenched tightly in front of him. It was clear that whatever he had to say was important. I know you've all been curious about the past, Mr. Carter began, his voice low and steady. About Sophia, your mother? The sisters stiffened. For years, they had lived with the mystery of their mother's disappearance. They had never spoken of her, never asked questions, but the truth was always there, hidden in the shadows of their home. Mr. Carter's eyes hardened. Sophia wasn't just my wife. She was. She was the love of my life. But we had a fight. A big fight. One that neither of us could ever recover from. Lily's heart raced. What happened, Father? She asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the moment. I can't explain it all, Mr. Carter said, his eyes clouded with old pain. But Sophia left me, and I've never been the same since. He paused, his breath heavy. But now, she's coming back. The words hit the daughters like a sudden blow. Rose's hand shook as she reached for her tea, her mind racing. What do you mean she's coming back? She's been found, Mr. Carter said, his voice tight. After all these years, She's coming back to the town." The room fell into stunned silence. The daughters couldn't believe it. The woman who had disappeared so many years ago, the woman whose name was always spoken in whispers, was returning. Mia's mind raced. Why now? Why after all this time? She had always sensed that her father's past held dark secrets, but this revelation shook her to the core. "I know this is a lot to take in," Mr. Carter said, standing up and walking to the window, his back to his daughters. "But you need to understand something. Her return, it will change everything. And I don't know what it will mean for us, for this family." Lily stood up, her eyes fixed on her father. "But why didn't you ever tell us? Why keep her a secret all these years?" Mr. Carter turned to face them, his expression a mixture of regret and anger. "Because I was protecting you. Because the truth is more dangerous than you can imagine. Sophia's return isn't just about her and me. It's about a fight that never ended, a fight that could destroy everything we've built." The sisters sat in stunned silence, their minds swirling with questions. Was their mother coming back to reclaim the life she had left behind? Or was something more sinister at play? For the first time in years, the Carter family felt torn apart by the truth. And as the days passed, the daughters knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The big secret had been revealed, and it had the power to change their lives forever.